Ahoy! While there are a lot of gold farms that you can do at the moment, there is also another very important farm that may be more important for you personally, which doesn't primarily focus on gold, even though that can be a side effect of it too. At this point I also gotta give you a little bit of a warning. While the reward that you get from this is extremely painful for your enemies, this farm is also the most painful by a mile that I've ever done in New World. This is probably one of the most confusing and also therefore misunderstood farms in Brimstone Sands, which is why I want to give you an in-depth explanation of how this farm works and what it's good for. The reason why I think it's important to do this farm now is because right now there are still a lot of people playing through the area and unlocking things, meaning there are a lot of people that are present for these encounters, and they would be near impossible to solo, if not completely impossible. One of them will likely still be frequented by people in the future, the other one less so. The farms that I'm talking about are Solarium Khepri and Ordeal of the Scorpion. And that place is called Ordeal for a reason, I can tell you that much. In Solarium Khepri you can find Dawn Chariot's Khepri, while in Ordeal of the Scorpion you can find Scorpio Supernatural. In both places you'll find a unique glyph stone, the Sun Glyph Stone or the Night Glyph Stone, and both of them have illegal perks or perk combinations that you normally can't roll on an item. Let's begin with Scorpio Supernatural. The first weapon that you can drop is Orion's Shame, a dex musket with refreshing power shot, vorpal and mortal power. So extremely good for headshotting, but probably not what most musket users are currently after. The other weapon that he drops, however, is Scorpio. If you are running or want to run a damage-focused sword and shield build, then this weapon is extremely interesting. It is full strength and has empowering leaping strike. Along with that, it has Trenchant Crits, which makes your charged heavy attacks deal 29% more crit damage, and Rogue, which is 18% extra backstab damage. Both of these perks directly increase the damage of your weapon and are classified as DmgCon, which is why you normally can't roll them together. So the idea here is jump someone with Leaping Strike, get the Empower, stun them, and then hit them with a heavy attack backstab for Trenchant Crits and Rogue's bonus, plus whatever you have on your shield, and it's gonna be absolutely insane. There is another item in Brimstone Sands that is conceptually similar, which is Shadow's Edge, but that doesn't drop from the sneak currently, so you can only randomly get it, whereas you can specifically farm Scorpio, and Scorpio may actually be better in general. That is something I still need to test and practice. The reason I recommend farming this now is because Scorpio is tied to one of the 26 glyphs that are in Brimstone Sands, so at the moment a lot of people will go to this encounter to unlock the glyph. Once that is no longer the case, it is going to be a lot harder to get a group together for Scorpio, because it is an extremely tedious farm. Now, there are two ways to get into Scorpio's area. There is a door that you can open if you have the correct glyph for it, or you can just drop through the ceiling where there's a massive hole and you can climb up the mountain to get in there. If you're not just farming in absolute peak times, I would highly recommend getting the key that opens the door, not only to simply get in, but also because if there are not that many people present at the Scorpion and you wipe, then you can get back into the fight through the door instead of having to run up the entire mountain to get back. The glyph is also extremely easy to get. It is Dun Yeech or Ordeal, which is glyph number 9, and you can find it at the Pools of Orcus, pretty much right next to the capital city of Brimstone Sands. Since it is next to a pool, you don't even need acid resist to loot it. Now let's talk about the encounter itself. Scorpio only spawns at night. A day and night cycle in New World is exactly 90 minutes long, but the daytime is 60 minutes, while the nighttime is just 30 minutes. The first spawn of Scorpio will happen exactly as it turns night. This spawn is always guaranteed, so Scorpio has a guaranteed spawn every 90 minutes. However, there is a potential second spawn. According to my recordings, I have killed Scorpio more than 70 times by now. Yup, let that sink in. And I can tell you that the second spawn definitely exists, but it's not guaranteed. There is even a possible third spawn, but I've only seen that once. The second spawn can happen at any point of the night. It can be 10 minutes later than the first, it can be 20 minutes later, or it can be 28 minutes later, right before day starts, and when that happens, Scorpio will actually despawn in the middle of the fight, which is extremely frustrating. If it despawns, it won't drop any loot. Now about the encounter itself, there are a few things you should know. How you need to approach it basically entirely depends on the number of players there. I would always recommend inviting people to your party that are around, assuming that you're both unflagged or flagged, so that you can guarantee the tag on the Scorpio. That tag is not guaranteed otherwise. You can deal a lot of damage to Scorpio and sometimes still not get a tag and not get kill credit if there are too many people around, which is very, very frustrating for an event encounter like this where it really shouldn't happen. Additionally, it appears that dealing damage to the eggs around the Scorpio will not count towards the kill credit, which may have something to do with them taking away XP and so on from them because they were very easy weapon mastery farm beforehand. In other words, when there are a lot of people around, your entire group just needs to all in on the boss. However, this is not the case when there are not that many people around, because then you actually have to pay attention to the mechanics of Scorpio. You can kill this guy with a very small group if you know what you're doing. We have killed him with 5 people before without having a healer because he's extremely easy to tank as long as you have one person that is tanking and they can just pot in between. But that requires this group to be competent and not all in on Scorpio as you would have to do when there's many people around. Instead, you want to make sure that you kill all the eggs around Scorpio, because the eggs are all just one shot, but will spawn fairly strong scorpions if not destroyed. You could, for example, have one person exclusively focusing the eggs, one tanking, one helping with the eggs and otherwise dealing damage, and the rest either dealing damage or one of them being a healer. If you are a healer, you can also shoot the eggs in between, because, again, this encounter is relatively easy and you don't need to heal that much. There are both blight and acid effects in the area, so if you're serious about this farm, I would recommend grabbing some blight tinctures along the way and also having a purifying toast amulet so you can clear acid burn if you ever get it. If you fail to destroy one of the eggs and a scorpion spawns, killing that scorpion should be the main priority of the group when there is no healer. That's because the stamina damage of the main Scorpio is basically the same as that of a small scorpion, and if you have multiple scorpions attacking the tank, it gets exponentially more difficult without a healer. Also, aside of it turning daytime, there are multiple mistakes that you have to avoid if you don't want to despawn Scorpio in the middle of the fight and end up with him not dropping loot. As a tank, you want to tank him in the open space away from the stone formation on the side, because if he gets too close to that stone formation, he can clip into it and despawn. Likewise, as a ranged user, you should not sit on that rock and try to shoot Scorpio when it's not actively being tanked by the tank. Otherwise, Scorpio will run to the same stone formation, clip into it, and eventually despawn quite often. You should generally not sit on that rock unless you absolutely have to, because it just causes more issues for everyone. As a melee, which most Sword and Shield users happen to be, a nice offhand to help clear the eggs on this boss is Blunderbuss. Now, for the fun thing about Scorpio and Supernatural's loot pool, the Scorpio drop is all but guaranteed. He seems to have the same drop rate for named items that other open world mobs in general do, only that those usually respawn every 6 minutes or so, while he has a much slower spawn time. In the loot pool, the sword competes with the musket Orion's Shame, and at this point I am 10 Orion's Shame deep. I don't know what to tell you about this. The chance to get either of them is equal if you get a lucky enough drop to get a purple named item from him. But I really think in the future New World should introduce a mechanic to prevent that, and maybe after you get one drop 3 times you're guaranteed to get the other, because I don't know anymore at this point. So as I said, this farm can be very painful. Along with that, he can also drop the Night Glyph. When you complete the encounter for the first time, make sure to pick up the glyph in the corner of the room so that you can unlock other things with that. And then you can also unlock the chest that is on the other side opposite of where you find the glyph. In this chest, you also have the chance to get the Night Glyph Stone as well as other loot like the golden scarabs. Since the Night Glyph only drops from Scorpio and this chest, it is actually extremely rare. As I'm sure this question will come up, I don't know if the drop chance of Scorpio is affected by having higher luck. I know that people will have gotten it while PvP flagged, unflagged, with luck gear and without. So if you want to go for the full luck route and get some of that elusive monsters turkey from the trading post as well, it's completely up to you. I will warn you at this point though, this boss is an absolute grind to farm and it is completely soul crushing. Also, I will show you the timetable for the guaranteed spawns here, but this is only accurate on Delos as of now. Because if there is any maintenance, that actually changes the time when it spawns, because the day and night cycle kind of gets reset or changed. So it used to be a different time. The server clock may be different between different days, so really you just have to check when the night starts once, and then you know that 90 minutes later the next night will start, and then you have your cycle. At this point, a quick reminder, if you appreciate the information that I've gathered for you here, I would appreciate a sub and a like very much. We also need to talk about the counterpart, Dawn's Chariot Khepri. Unsurprisingly, as this guy drops the Sun Glyph Stone, he only spawns during the day. Once again, this is being made much easier by being able to open the door, and in this case you need to open it with the Day Glyph, or Aber, which you can find at Lamp of Osiris. I will show you the route right here, so you basically can just run through the area, and then you'll find a little pathway to the right, a staircase that goes downstairs, and here you can drop down. There are normally some mobs here, some mobs that you can easily find on your own though, and that is where you'll be able to find the corresponding glyph. By the way, if you crawl through the little hole on the opposite side of that glyph, you can also drop down further, and if you follow the path to the right, you'll actually find a secret little gate with some chests behind it. So what can Khepri drop? The first weapon is Sunrise Spear, which honestly isn't all too impressive, since it's using Refreshing rather than Refreshing Move. The second item, however, is Dusk Runners. Dusk Runners comes with full intelligence, refreshing evasion, freedom, and shirking energy. This is obviously interesting because normally shirking energy can only be on your pants. There is another pair of shoes in the game that can do this, but it is interesting if you're going for some specific build where you have something very good in your pants. On the other hand, obviously not that great because you're not getting resilient on this item. The third item is Charioteer's Boots, which I guess are nice for a tank that's just starting out, but they don't have resilient or any type of ward, so they're not particularly impressive. Now in many ways Khepri is the same as Scorpio, so I'm not going to repeat everything here. Watch the Scorpio section first so you understand how the mechanics generally work. He spawns at Solarium Khepri only during the day and the first time when the sun rises. That, by the way, means if you're aggressively farming Scorpio and don't want to miss out on any spawns, you will miss out on the Khepri spawn at morning because you will still be at Scorpio in case it just spawns last minute. But here's the thing with Khepri. The fight is definitely more difficult because he spawns archers all around the arena. Of course, if there's a large Zerg around, you can simply burn Khepri down. But if there's only a small group, then you have to play very focused. You have to have your DPS clear out some of the archers so that your healer doesn't get completely clogged by them, and the tank will make sure that Khepri stays within a confined area and not run after him constantly, because that just ends up pulling a lot more archers. But here's something to consider for you. Khepri drops a bunch of named loot that isn't really that great, or similar items can be farmed in other ways, so you likely won't need that. What he also drops is a Sun Glyph. However, every single chest around him can also drop Sun Glyphs. This includes the 4 glyph chests, but also the small sarcophagi around him. So once you have been part of a single kill to unlock the glyph, you may as well walk in there later during the day and loot the 6 chests, and you'll have plenty of chances to get Sun Glyphs. You only get 1 extra chance from killing Khepri, and the chance is not any higher as far as I'm aware. The only other benefit from being part of the kill is that other people will be around to open the chest for you if you don't have all the glyphs yet, but none of them is particularly hard to get. For both bosses, an important reminder: if you're farming them throughout the day, you may be logging in and out in between. When you log out, your camp is destroyed, so when you log in, make sure to go outside of the door real quick and place a new camp. If you die mid-fight, you may otherwise lose out on your tag and your loot. If this info was at all useful to you, then please consider subscribing and clicking the bell. I have more info about the rune glass cases coming soon, which kind of relates to the glyphs you're farming here, and also more info on the greatsword. Also, when in 10 years I finally get Scorpio, I have some interesting tests coming up with that I want to share with you. Thanks for watching, DmgCon out.